Hello once again and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed and we are reading the Meno to discover how to get virtue. What is virtue? Can it be taught? And what is the significance of the dialectic that Socrates has been pointing to this whole time, has been demonstrating this whole time, and has been encouraging Meno to do? Because we're about 15 pages in of the text that is 17 pages in of a 48-page text, and we've already got several examples of this thing called dialectic, and our friend Meno doesn't know how to understand something. He doesn't know how to define something. He can only point to physical examples of that thing, adjectives. Now, we all recognize this is how 99% of human beings think. They don't know how to come to definitions. They can point to examples of things, but understanding the thing itself, especially if it's an aspect of being, is not part of our education, not part of our general thinking, but exactly what we need to do in philosophy. Exactly what we need to do to reach truth, to reach reality, to reach enlightenment, and even to go beyond it to discover our destiny, to know the self. So, all this is tied to understanding. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
So, what is normally considered the opposite of understanding, spirituality or experiencing reality or enlightenment or our purpose, normally people in that game don't like understanding for reasons we are reading about here, actually. What we're discovering is, no, actually, it's very much tied to understanding. Following the Logos, following the reasoned principles that we use when we think and understand, is following our path, our purpose, our destiny to enlightenment. Because the things that we are wanting to define, if they exist in themselves, exist in being, which is something that we can understand through the Logos and the dialectic, that's the structure, and something we can verify in direct experience. That's called nous. Now, our friend Meno hasn't recognized this, so Socrates is calling his education from a teacher who doesn't realize this, or hasn't done this, or hasn't at least mastered it. He at least doesn't teach it. That's his teacher, Gorgias, because that's Meno's education. It's comically tragic or theatrically tragic that his education doesn't lead to this experience. What experience? Being able to verify for yourself, recognize for yourself, experience for yourself the nature of the thing that you have learnt to understand and define and talk about. Meno is struggling to even talk about what virtue is, let alone experience it itself. So these are the reasons why Socrates has called his education tragic. He can't understand and he can't experience. And that experience you could call a mystical experience, because its existence isn't in the physical world of examples or adjectives. It has its existence eternally, which is necessary for there to be instances of it in the physical world. So we sometimes say there has to be a noun for it to be used as adjectives. There has to be beauty itself for there to be beautiful things in the physical world. There has to be virtue itself for there to be virtuous people. So, a very, rational way of understanding learning, but very different from what we are used to and what our friend Meno is used to. Rational because, of course, why wouldn't you want to understand? And why wouldn't you want to verify that understanding and experience? Why settle for mere opinions and beliefs from other people who themselves lack that? And so why would you settle for beliefs from ignorant people instead of understanding and experience? Now, what we have been seeing in the text is the implications of that. Meno thinks that one way of understanding virtue is attacking the bad people, right? Shooting the bad guys, beating up the enemies. But we can realize, well, that's stupid, because who are the enemies? If everybody seeks good things, then what makes people different? And we realize the difference only comes down to this kind of education, the kind of education that Meno himself has. Education based on belief. Why? Because you can trick people through belief. Belief isn't understanding. Understanding has to be true. That's nature. And as we're seeing, understanding is verified for yourself in your own personal experience. Objective, in that you're experiencing something objectively true, but personal, in that you are experiencing it for yourself. You don't have to believe, my hat's being funny today, you don't have to believe anybody else. So if you are settling for just beliefs and opinions, they can be very easily manipulated, and that's the consequences of that we see even today in our everyday life. Many people fighting based on dumb beliefs. Politics based on beliefs. Economic systems based on beliefs. Things that we know are objectively harmful and causing mass suffering, murder, torture, genocide, and exploitation. And perhaps even the inevitable destruction of our planet and our species if this isn't addressed, if we don't pick up the logos and move from beliefs which can be manipulated and tricked. People can be tricked to believe the bad is the good and therefore seek those bad things. Moving from belief to understanding. So, this is the education that Meno is lacking and we lack in our current culture, at least the time of the recording that this is being made in 2024. But Socrates is helping us do something different. He's helping us learn the model for how to understand what he has called the gentle art of the dialectic. How do you understand? How do you climb that ladder, which is also a springboard to nous? Which is knowledge, by the way. Real knowledge. And one of our questions is, how come Socrates says he doesn't have knowledge of virtue? Has he not had that experience? If not, has his dialectic and his understanding been lacking? Is it currently lacking? What's going on? So we have a huge puzzle. What the heck does he mean yet that you can't? He doesn't know knowledge. Sorry, he doesn't have knowledge of virtue. Because he seems to be spot on with the logos and the dialectic. So, a puzzle we are carrying. Nevertheless, we have established this paradigm. He has invited Meno to use it, just as he is inviting you to use it. He's talking to us, which is amazing. He is somehow communicating to you for your benefit through time, which is interesting, and we can hopefully develop questions about that. How can a human being function through time in that way? People who have only remembered or have only memories of physical experiences, that seems absurd. Because the physical is time and space, which moves linearly through time. How can you operate outside of time? Doesn't make sense for somebody with Meno's education, with a crappy education. But we can have questions about it. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean for truth? What does it mean for being? What does it mean for mastery of the logos and enlightenment? Nevertheless, as we do, we take those questions, we put them into our question sack, which we carry in our inventory, and we keep reading. So, we are being encouraged to learn this dialectic, learn this method of understanding, as is Meno, the character that we are reading about. And Meno is a little bit butthurt, we might say. Doesn't like the fact that he can't understand, doesn't like the fact that he has been making all these speeches and being a what we call a sophist or a heuristicon people who use language to make their opinions seem grand, which is literally the way that people at 2024 think. That's what philosophy is, a way of bullcrapping so your dumb opinions can be sound really wise. That's our standard. Why? Well, if our education is theatrically tragic as Meno's is, and we don't reach being, then what's our standard for truth? We don't have a model of truth. Everything is what we call today all relative. Everything is relative. Everything is based on physical perception. It's all perception. And therefore, it's all opinion. Everything is based on perceptions and point of view. So your opinion is your truth and my opinion is my truth. And who's to say what's right and wrong? Garbage. Or who's to say, well, how loudly you can yell at someone? Or, in terms of modern philosophy, how many authorities you can quote. Can you quote Kant? Can you quote Hegel? Can you use big words? Which is exactly what Meno did. When Meno was offered a chance to use the paradigm that actually is a paradigm that exists eternally, a paradigm of truth, and a paradigm that leads us to the experience of truth in being, he instead decided to quote a poet he likes, or quote a poet who happens to agree with the opinions he already has. Modern philosophy, modern debating, that kind of stuff. So, what we are learning is a very different way of thinking and being compared to our current society, which is no different from the prevailing society even in Socrates' times. So we can ask the question, how come we haven't learned? How come we haven't been listening to Socrates? And of course there are historical reasons for that. The Dark Ages, the killing of Socrates, the burning of the libraries, the shutting down of the academy, the murdering of the philosophers, the murdering of anyone who had even the Bible. You couldn't even read the Bible. You had to accept dumb beliefs and interpretations from professors of the faith, priests. Similar to our education today, professors of the faith or professors teaching interpretations of Plato, interpretations of Socrates, interpretations of Nietzsche. You're not learning how to read. You are being a slave to beliefs. So, lots of reasons why we haven't been learning from Socrates, and that's important to realize because we have to acknowledge where we are, where we're starting from. And what we're starting from is this muck of interpretations and based on beliefs and authorities, which Meno personifies. And so, learning about Meno, we're learning about where we're starting from, but we have to move from Meno to Socrates. From something that's anti-logos to something that follows the logos. That's what we're here for. That's our purpose. That's true understanding. That's what leads us to enlightenment or truth or nous or knowing. And that is what we are, the path towards our destiny. Our destiny is for everybody. Everybody who has language and can reflect on themselves. This game is open to everyone. There is no gatekeeping. Now, saying you can't have the text for 1,000 years because you'll get... That's a form of gatekeeping. Saying understanding is the devil and believing the guy in the funny hat, that's your way to salvation. That's another form of gatekeeping. Saying you can't read unless you can afford a college degree, you can't be a philosopher, that's a form of gatekeeping. You need a PhD on your wall, that's a form of gatekeeping. You need all these big words and to have read all these big, boring, dumb books, not really, read interpretations of these dumb books from these guys with the fancy names like Nietzsche and Hegel and Heidegger. That's a form of gatekeeping. True philosophy doesn't have gatekeeping. Anyone who has the desire to know can play. It's for everybody.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're a wizard, Harry. And that's what we're doing on this channel. We're reading for ourselves together while learning how to read as we go. And we're trying to use reflection and metaphor to make it understandable to everybody. because everybody is in this quest. This is the destiny, not just of you, of all people. So we call it the destiny of man.
Wow.
So Meno represents where we're at. Socrates represents what we are learning, the method, following the logos through the dialectic. And of course, Socrates is encouraging us to go beyond him, which is fantastic, wonderful. And from that, we can develop new questions about what it means to be a teacher. Is a teacher doing what Meno wants? The teacher's to be our authority who's closer to God, and therefore they get to be the Pope or bishops or whatever, or the priests? Or is it the opposite, where they say, you go beyond me. I'm just here to give you a leg up because it's about your learning, your development. Okay, that's the realm of religion and cults and things. But what about even modern academia? Hey, Nietzsche is too complicated for someone like you to read. Plato's written in ancient Greek. You don't have the academic background to read that. You don't know the context of Socrates and Plato. Ha 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 ha. Just here is a bunch of beliefs I'm going to spoon feed you for, $300,000, and you'll get a degree in philosophy. And so long as you realize that I'm the one with tenureship, I'm the one with these PhDs on my wall. I am the professor of the faith, or the professor. That's where the word comes from. That's kind of the game right now. Socrates is doing the opposite of that, isn't he? He's saying, hey, here's where you're at, Meno. This is what I'm teaching you and modeling, but I'm only doing that so that you can master it and go up. In the Phaedo, he said, you're Hercules, I am... Oh, God, no, I can never remember this guy's name. I'm Hercules' long-suffering assistant. I don't know if he's suffering. I don't know the stories. Maybe you can tell me about it. If you know about Hercules' assistant, then you can add the comments in the chat. Now, I'm pain and panic. Okay, now I'm okay. I'm Googling Hercules' assistant. But it's giving me Disney results. Aeolus. How do I say this? Iolaus. Iolaus. Okay. How do I remember that? I allow you to go beyond me, says Socrates. I'm allowing you to go beyond me. Iolaus. Socrates, I'm Iolaus. You are the main character. You are Hercules. You're the one who has to do it. Which is very different from what we are doing today. So, if that's the paradigm that of true education, different to Gorgias, different to Meno, different to religious space authorities, or not just religious, any group, the politicians say, hey, the economics is too hard for you to understand, dum-dum. It's not, by the way. It's very simple. Who gets the money? That's it. But you just believe me, I'm a politician that you can have a beer with. Belief-based. We've already seen in the text that being led to belief can trick you into thinking the bad is the good. Makes the difference between the good guys and bad guys, who is manipulated by belief and who drops that to develop understanding to recognize for themselves. So when offered this paradigm, Meno instead quotes someone he likes. Didn't work. Now we're going back to the quest again, as Socrates does. You failed, but let's go back to it. Let's keep an open mind. Aporia, which is part of this game of virtue. And let's go back to the logos and try the paradigm again. And Meno's like, well, how do you even understand anything? So he's really cranky right now. He's really butthurt that he can't pretend to be a knower anymore. How do you even understand? And why even search for something you don't know? Because if you don't know it, how do you know you've gotten it? And how do you know what to look for? Socrates says that's dumb. He doesn't say it's dumb. He says it's heuristikon logon. Heuristics, which is using words to just con people, win debates, argue convincingly. That's heuristics, the opposite of the logos. And logos. That's heuristikon logon, garbage, he would say. Why is it? Well, Socrates said, well, actually, I have heard from wise men and women. Interesting. Women can be wise. Uh-oh, Meno. Uh-oh. Current modern society. Uh-oh. Abrahamic religions that subjugate women and blame them for sin based on garbage nonsense. Uh-oh, women can do it too. Maybe sexism is garbage, says Socrates. Hey, don't blame me, it's Socrates. And he's already been blamed and executed, so don't get butthurt about it, but open your mind. From wise women and men about divine realities. So, what makes you wise? Something about knowing divine realities or being. That sparks Meno's interest. Ooh, what do these people say? That's where we're at. That was the cliffhanger last time. What do these people have to say about divine realities that makes them wise? Because Meno wants to be wise. He's struggling with what it means to be wise. I thought it was just to have being able to argue your opinions really well. Nope. But that's, and then Meno says, well, hang on a second. Every red pill podcast I've seen and every YouTube philosophy video that's been recommended to me on my ancient Greek YouTube have just been people claiming to be smarter and wiser than everyone simply because they can argue their opinions better. I'll say, no, Meno. Just because it's popular on YouTube and people are claiming the name philosopher or claiming the status of what wise doesn't mean it's true. You're being grifted to. That's capitalism. That's the scam economy that we're living in. That's late stage capitalism. I hope it's late stage. Meno doesn't say that, but if we were to do a modern version of the Meno, we would include that because that's our current idea of wisdom, being able to use heuristikon logon, which is garbage words, to argue your opinions. Instead, wise is about something that both men and women can have, and is about the divine realities. What do they say about? What do they speak about? What's their words? And Socrates gives it to us in two simple words. Now, this is something we can learn from. Obviously, if they're wise about the divine realities, they probably said a lot about a lot of things. A lot of how to reach there and the purpose of being and stuff. But Socrates answers with two words: truth and beauty. Why? Why is that the best way to start? Is that a simple definition? Could that be the start of a dialectic? Could this be the definition? And then if he doesn't know what truth and beauty is, then you give a demonstration of it. If still he doesn't follow that, then you divide it up into division to show what follows if truth and beauty exist and what if it doesn't. And then from that, do you come to a conclusion, synthesizing the conclusions from that into a unity and then analyzing it back to those first two words? Is that the dialectic that we are going to see? Can we predict that? If it's a paradigm, we could make predictions based on that model. Nevertheless, we can ask the question, why did he start with just, oh yeah, easy, truth and beauty? What kind of an answer is that? What do the wise men, Do men who are wise and men and women who are wise, because they know divine realities, the logos that they use are about truth and beauty? Truth and beauty? That's it? What a way to start. Now we're seeing that Socrates, time and time again, is trying to move around Meno's blocks, getting angry, getting butthurt, getting name calling, and all these sorts of things that he is doing, which people even, I'm sure in the conversations you have, every single day this happens. He is sidestepping around it and inviting and enticing Meno back in. Maybe that's the beauty part. Why seek truth if you don't have a desire for it? And how can you have a desire or love for it if it's not beautiful? Maybe that's why it's beauty and truth. Simply telling the truth might not be persuasive. Or, if our goal isn't to persuade but invite people into a higher way of being, if that's part of virtue, not just doing virtue yourself, but being a model of virtue, being a beacon of virtue, maybe the truth has to come along with beauty for it to be attractive to someone like Meno, attractive to people. Hey, we've had this text from Socrates for 2,500 years. Why haven't we learned? Maybe part of our quest is to add beauty to truth, along with, of course, mastering the truth. These are all hypotheses that we can come to, possible answers to the question of why beauty and truth. Which also connects to other questions. What is Socrates doing? Because I'm not at Socrates' level, we might say, but I've talked to people like Meno and they duck out of the conversation very, very quickly. How the heck can you keep Meno engaged for so long? As soon as people hear that their opinions are disagreed with, they get angry and violent, or they just leave. Or they make fun of you and leave, or gang up on you and leave. Lots of different ways of shutting down from the truth. How is Socrates doing it better? And is that a part of virtue? These are the questions that we are carrying. So, why do the wise men and women who are wise because they know divine reality, why do they speak of truth and beauty? That's our question that we have as we continue our reading. Let's jump in. Now my hat is white. So, says Socrates to Meno, that's Euristikon logos and garbage language, debate bro language, contentious argument, you could say. That means that people in general should not search for that which they know, for they already know it, nor search for what they don't know, because how will they know what they're looking for? So what do we do in our life? No searching. Just pretend like we know everything already and just use Euristikon logon. Use words to just justify your own opinions or win debates, or own the other side and make catchy YouTube thumbnails. Philosopher owns guy on the other team. Now, you might say, well, hang on a second. Every single one of those YouTube videos has the exact same conversation posted by the other side who had the other opinions saying that they owned the other guy. Everybody's owning everyone. It's almost as though that kind of Euristikon logos, or debate language doesn't actually do anything. It's just drama for drama's sake. No one's opinions are changed. No one is made better. Nobody learns. And we, as a human race, stay stuck in the same garbage problems that we've had to begin with. Which is a criticism you can make about not just YouTube content, but philosophy, modern philosophy in general. Okay, so let's keep reading. So, isn't that a good argument? No, it's not. It's a garbage argument, says Socrates. Why? Because both wise men and women, who are wise about the divine realities, say something else. What do they say? The truth and beauty. What does that mean? That's where we are. What was this? And who were the speakers? On the one hand, says Socrates, the speakers were priests and priestesses who have paid careful attention so as to be able to deliver the logos pertaining to their ministry. Now, let's see if this word is actually ministry. Why? Because it's interesting. They're talking about wise people. And like any kind of reading, you have to be able to discern what is the actual text and what might be a mistranslation from the translator because of his own upbringing. And people are now, this current period of time in history, usually you grow up in a religious, usually Abrahamic, Christian, Muslim, or Jewish, influenced society. So ministry is one of those words that could be an interpretation by the author, but we're learning to read for ourselves so we can look it up for ourselves. And we can even do it together. Now we're in space. And we can pull up the internet. Here is the word. Woof. Metahirisote. Metachirizonte. Okay? Easy for you to say. Metachirizonte means in Greek. Okay, that one didn't really help us. To take in hand, handle, administer, manage, conduct, practice, pursuit, study. Interesting. So that which you're an administrator of, that which you manage, that which you conduct or study, that which you belong to. Interesting. That which you're administrating or hand. See, good thing we looked it up. That word doesn't necessarily mean, this word here, doesn't necessarily mean ministry. That which they are administrator of, or manage, or handle. So, you can add a note. That which one manages, handles, administers, practices, or pursues as an art. Oh, in fact, as we see here, Plato, to study or do as an art, to pursue or practice, to practice, pursue, or study as an art. Okay? To practice, pursue, study, or do as an art. Now, this is key for us because we are learning what virtue is, and if it's something that benefits, as we've seen already, then maybe can be tied to an art. Is virtue some sort of mastery of an art that you can use to benefit? So, this is an example of reading. If it's a key word, or you suspect it might be a word misinterpreted by the translator, you don't even have to believe the translator. So we've gone a long way since the last 1500 years where you'd get murdered if you had the text. It was written in a language you can't even read. And even today, you don't even read the text because you don't read the Greek. You read your own language's interpretation of it, and you don't even read the original text. Most of the time, you read somebody else's interpretation of it at college. So, many, many stages removed. You can't even do this. But see how important it is. Ministry is different from an art. Ministry is Christian language, and our translator had a Christian upbringing. Doesn't mean it has to be wrong, but it can be something we can become aware of, because every human being has blind spots or personal interpretations. That's why we spend half our time doing midwifery on this channel. Equally so, priests and priestesses. Let's see. Now, sometimes we talk about other philosophers that you might see on YouTube. One of them is our friend Alex, something or other. He debates people with religious beliefs. And one of the things that he could ask those people is, hey, by the way, so Alex sometimes will say, hey, here is your book, the Bible, let's say. Here is an example of God saying it's okay to do slavery, or it's okay to do genocide, or it's okay to abuse women. What do you say about that? And the Christian guy, his job will be, because, as we know from Philosophical Midwifery, he's a member of a group and a family, and he has a role and a way of expressing himself within that belief. It's his Pathologos. So his job is to justify that groupthink. So we say, well, actually, here is my own interpretation that I can explain away the things I don't already agree with and keep the parts that I do. Interpretation. Nonsense. Alex could ask a follow-up question. Oh, by the way, if somebody else was using that section from the Bible to justify their abuse of women, to justify their genocide, and you weren't there to give your creative interpretation, how could they read it in a way that would tell them, hey, it's bad to do those bad things? In other words, if your game is just use heuristicon logos, garbage language, to justify whatever opinions to win an argument, what does that mean for the guy when you're not in the room? So look, the Bible says it's okay to abuse women. I guess I'm going to abuse women. Nothing in the text says that I can't. And old mate on the YouTube channel isn't here to give his creative personal opinions. This is the significance of, first of all, reading a text that is in the Logos, that has integrity. And of course the Bible doesn't have integrity. It's a collection of many different books from many different people who have many different levels of development and many different false beliefs in Pathologos. So that's a bad starting point, but also the significance of reading. That's what we're learning how to do, how to read without interpretation. So one of the many problems with Christianity is Paul. Many people don't actually have a opinion about Christianity based on Jesus, but Paul, who's a completely different fellow with a whole litany of problems and false interpretations and heuristicon logo. So So it's very important that we learn how to read, just to have integrity. Because words matter, truth matters, understanding matters. Now, in a similar way, well, in the opposite way, we could say, we are reading for ourselves and looking at the translator that we're reading from. Does it actually say priest? Let's see. Ieron. And ieron means holy place. Okay. Connected with the gods. Let's look at the lexicon. Ieron. Okay, not that one. Serpent, not that one. Priest? Okay. Consecrate, dedicate, hallow. So it might be priest. Here we go. Manifesting divine power. Or holy. Filled with or manifesting divine power. That makes more sense than priest. Now, is it no surprise that ministry and priest is the words a translator heavily influenced by Christianity would pick? No. Very predictable and understandable. But if we read the text, we can say, hang on a second. What makes people wise? Both men and women. Hey, by the way, there are some ministries that don't allow women. Ooh. So, maybe tying it to ministries and priesthood is not in the text and an interpretation. So what makes men wise? They know divine realities. What's the word that means filled with or manifesting divine power? And my... Whoops. Yeah. Let's copy that. Maybe we could say priest, but maybe realizing that priest is so linked. Highlight. Where's my highlighter? Priest is so linked with those that profess the faith or interpret the text and give beliefs that are supposed to be believed on faith. That's completely different than what we are reading about. In fact, it's the exact opposite. So realizing that priest is not what is being talked about here, at least the way that we understand what it means to be a priest. Filled with or manifesting divine power or supernatural. URAL. This is the significance of reading for ourselves. So, we've already said, hey, wise people, not people of the cloth, or people who are in positions of authorities in religions. Wise people. What are they wise about? They know the divine realities. So what can they speak about? They speak about people who speak filled with or manifesting divine power. Is that a priest? I wouldn't say it's a priest. Maybe if you have a different idea of religion or spirituality, you might use that word. Okay? So deliver the logos pertaining to their art. Very different from a priest talking about their ministry, which can be any kind of crazy nonsense, compared to someone who has a knowledge of the divine realities, is filled with that power in some way, and speaks about that pertaining to their art. Interesting way what happens when you read for yourself. And we have the internet, and we have this text, which is free, so you can find a link below. You can see it for yourself and learn to read for yourself. Okay, the speakers were people filled with the divine who paid careful attention so they could deliver logos. Hey, how many priests use the logos? Zero. Zero priests. How many priests? Zero priests. Well, what about all the Abrahamic religions? Zero. They don't follow the logos. They follow opinions, which is a variety of false nonsense, misunderstanding, mistranslations, pathologos, maybe some logos sprinkled in, but who knows? All of them. But what about Eastern ones? No logos there either. In fact, this is what makes philosophy the paradigm of spirituality. It's not just the paradigm of the method of development. It's an understanding. It's the words. It's the logos. It's what makes it an art. It's not an art if it's just getting lucky. You sit at an ashram for 40 years and one day you have an enlightenment experience. Oh, now I'm wise. No. Did you understand why it took you 40 years? Did you understand your problems? Hey, have you been able to use the logos to address your problems? Have you been doing midwifery? Nope. You just had a glimpse. So, logos, very different from priests, very different from ministries. This isn't a personal criticism against our translator. This translator is the best. It's only because we have the Balboa translations that we can awaken philosophy, which is the name of change.
Wow. 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 What? Wow.
But as we are human beings, we have a level of development of the logos along with a level of freedom from our pathologos. You have to be aware that everybody is on that arc. So, careful attention to the logos. And Pindar and others who are divine poets. Different.
Wow.
What's the difference between a divinely inspired poet and someone who has paid careful attention to the logos? Let's make sure we have the words. Esian, is that the word for poet? Puiton. Poet, yep. Puiton. Yes. Those who, yes. Okay. Those who bring into existence. So, those who produce. Those who compose or write. Manufacturers of works of art. So the word is poet. Now there are two kinds of poets. There is the definition of music that's given in the symposium. Anyone who brings from the world of being into the realm of becoming. That's creating. You can create using an art. So is he talking about that? Which would require, of course, the logos. Or there's another class of poet, divinely inspired poets, which might be the one he's speaking with here. These are people who don't have an understanding, don't have a logos. You can, Ion comes to mind. You can be speaking absolute garbage and nonsense, but very inspiringly. Like many preachers can stand in front of a congregation and wax poetic, as we say, about how to do finances, how to run relationships. They've got no economic training, no logos of economics. They've got no understanding of relationships, no logos of relationships, but they are divinely inspired when they have the Bible open. It could be that. Those are the two possibilities. So people who are wise are, go away, notes. Okay, people who are wise about divine realities and pay careful attention to be able to deliver the logos pertaining to their art. Is he saying that's the same as Pindar? Or is he making a class distinction between people who have wisdom of the divine realities and logos so that they can communicate in art? Is he differentiating that from divinely inspired poets who could just be getting lucky? We take both and we keep reading. See what pans out. This then is that which they say, but consider if they appear to you to speak the truth. Okay, so whether they're divinely inspired or they have wisdom and logos and can function according to an art, it's up to us to see it for ourselves. For they say that the soul of a human being is immortal and deathless. Okay, so now we're getting some words of wisdom. The soul of the human being is immortal, deathless, and at one time it comes to an end, which they surely say is to die, but at another time she comes to be again. Okay, reincarnation. Whereas she is never completely annihilated. We've seen a lot of this in our reading of the Phaedo. Surely then, on account of these concerns, one should live one's life with utmost piety. Let's nail down this word, because why not? Osiotata. Osiotata means sanctioned by divine law, holy. Yeah, so it is holiness. Osiotata. Which is not one of the standard 5 virtues that is covered in the Republic, but it's a special class of a special kind of virtue, osiotata, holiness, which is addressed in Euthyphro. holiness is to act like the gods. Now, again, we are seeing the difference between modern ideas of belief and religion and stuff like that, which is to do it because you're told to. That's faith. Do it because you're told, not because you understand it, not because you see why it should be the case. The opposite. Authority, belief, faith. That which can trick you into seeking bad things. Now, in Euthyphro, he talks about, hey, do we do it just because the gods say so? Or do we call it holiness because we understand it's what the gods want? Not because they want it, but because it's good of its own course, of its own nature, and anyone who is divine would want it anyway. In other words, the gods want it because it's good. We don't do it just because the gods say so. To be divine is to seek that which the divine would recognize as the highest good, which is a virtue. Not like Meno seeking what mortals want, gold and silver, as he said, that's what he thinks is the good. Nope. If you could see all of time and space, if you could even reflect on the cause of even the gods, of even divine reality, what would be the highest good that you could see from that perspective? And the virtue of holiness is seeking that. It's not doing what God says, genociding the colored people that your Bible says so, or enslaving the people that the Bible says so, or subjugating women because the Bible says so. Hey, look, even women can be gods of the divine reality. It's not doing that, it's instead the virtue of seeking the thing that the gods want because it's good. That's Euthyphro. Anyway, so why would we do that? Why would we keep an eye on what the gods would seek, being immortal beings? Well, because our soul is immortal. That's this argument here. Hey, if our soul reincarnates, which means that our soul never is completely annihilated and therefore is divine, shouldn't we keep our eye focused on the kind of good that the gods would seek outside of the physical world? This is a question we've thought about lots on this channel. If we're here for a reason, what could that reason be? Surely it can't be collecting gold and silver or fame or Instagram likes, because we all know we're going to die. You can't take that with you. So Socrates often talks about the education and nurture, the purification and perfection of a kind of learning, because that education and nurture, the integration into your way of being of that learning, would be something you could take with you out of this life. And therefore, if we're being rational, it would be seeking that. Another way of saying that is, what would the gods want? If you realize there was more than just this one physical life, so chasing Bugattis and Instagram famous clicks, Instagram clicks, wouldn't be, maybe that could be the highest good if you think there's just this one lifetime. And hey, that's capitalism, right? That's modern politics. Be as big a liar and a grifter and a con artist, be as unjust as you can if you can get away with it. Because who cares? There's no consequence to how we live here. There's no immortality to the soul. There's no next life. There's no next reincarnation. Is a point of view that some people who haven't learnt, whose education has been theatrically tragic, who haven't been initiated into the non-physical world, whose education has just been about the physical world and opinions, teachers like Gorgias, and have been people like Meno. That's what Meno says. Meno says, hey, you know what's virtue? Being nice to your friends and harming your enemies, keeping women subjugated, having slaves. Seeing the elderly and children as second-class citizens. and seeking gold and silver. Oh, yeah, some fame and some good status in society. And getting away with it. That's capitalism in a nutshell. That's a modern society in a nutshell. But Socrates says, hey, by the way, those who are wise, who have experience of the divine realities, who can function with it, not priests, but have filled with or manifesting that divine power, and have paid careful attention to the logos. So they just haven't had a one-off experience. They've actually developed understanding, so they can pursue and practice an art. So let's cross out. It's hard to, there we go. So let's cross out the words that we should cross out. How do I do a strike through? Here we go. There we go. Cross out priests and priestesses, cross out ministry. There we go. Those people who've had that experience can function with it as an art because they have the logos. Say, hey, you know what? You guys don't know it yet because you're just starting your education, Meno. You haven't been in the Phaedo, by the way. You don't know it yet, but your soul is immortal. Therefore, you should live your life seeking what the gods seek. Your soul is immortal. And reincarnation is real. Which is something that we have to not just believe from people who have experienced it and understood it, and can function with it to benefit as an art, not just trust them. We have to follow what they have done so we can see it for ourselves. But to begin the process, there is a level of trust from those people who've had that experience. Just like, hey, if you've gone to Disneyland but your friend hasn't, and you can show that you've been to Disneyland, you can show you've got the Mickey Mouse ears, you can demonstrate a knowledge of the rides, you have an understanding of how to get there, and you can convey that understanding of how to get to Disneyland. You can use all that, and you'd have to trust that friend to follow their directions to get there. In other words, there are reasons to trust somebody who's already been there and has an understanding and can use it in this way to begin with. But after you have listened and learnt and understood and gone to Disneyland, you don't have to believe him anymore. But you have to start somewhere. That might be why Socrates is introducing these people to Meno, who's a bit stuck right now. For which reason, they say, in the 9th year, so I think this is Pindar, the poet Pindar. In the 9th year, Persephone sends souls from those whom she has received the penalty for ancient grief. Okay, don't think this is probably penalty. Anyway, let's keep reading. Back again to the sun above. Okay, let's see if this is the word penalty. I'm not happy with this penalty. Yeah. Puinan. What's puinan mean? Not in there. What? It is the word punished. That's not good. Paid the price. That sounds better. Do we see the words PL for Plato anywhere down there? Can't see a PL. Paid in return, requital, price paid. Recompense. Why is that significant? Because in a domination authority society that exploits other human beings for the personal short-term benefit of a small minority, like in capitalism, like in fascism, you have to use violence to maintain this inequality. And one of the words used to justify violence is punishment. Right? Take all the money away from people, so what do you have to do to survive? Do crimes. But that means you're bad, which means we can set up a prison system and have a legal system and a police force to punish the evildoers. Meno's idea of virtue. Instead of reflecting on the cause of problems, capitalism, fascism, wealth inequality, exploitation, and addressing the causes of them to actually solve problems, which would be being mature and rational. So punishment is currently used as a way of justifying violence, which is needed for exploitation and tyranny. But if the word is not punishment or receiving penalties, but purification is one of the words here, purification. Or what's the word? Recompense. Then maybe the reason we're here is not to suffer mindlessly in a way that doesn't change anything and maintains the problem, but a kind of reflection through this art, listening to those who have an art and the logos and can use it to benefit, like Socrates, to purify your false beliefs, like Meno's, and develop true understanding and develop the art yourself. That could be, what's the word? Poinan. So let's keep that in mind. Purification or recompense. That could be a possibility. So, Persephone sends the souls who have received the purification from ancient grief. Now, those who are following along with our philosophical midwifery reading recognize, ancient grief. That could be the pathologos. Why? Because the pathologos is a false belief about self and reality that causes our worst injustice, blocks us from learning, blocks us from purification, that's inherited through the family clan that goes all the way back to caveman days. It's an ancient grief. Now let's see if the word is grief. Poinan. Pentheos. What does pentheos mean? Grief or sorrow. Unhappy event, misfortune. Misfortune. Yeah, see, I didn't like the word grief because it's the feeling you have about a misfortune. What's the first one? Ill fortune. Unhappy event. So, notice how much that changes it here. Unhappy event or misfortune. Now, with this reading for ourselves, because we have the internet and we have the Balboa translation, which has the Greek, and we can add that with our own art that we have been paying careful attention to, following the Logos, Philosophical Midwifery, we could recognize, hang on a second, purification from an ancient misfortune and unhappy event. Let's see if the word ancient is there. That sounds like philosophical midwifery. The ancient unfortunate event or misfortune, which is the cause of all of the other misfortunes we will play out in our lives, is literally the pathologos. The false belief about ourselves and reality that we carry as unsuspected and wordless. That purification is literally directed to. Socrates says there's two parts of our education and nurture. Purification from what's false, that's philosophical midwifery. That's why we read that book. And perfection, use that freedom from your blocks to perfect your learning in the Logos. Now, knowing that, we can better read what's there. Otherwise, we might be, I guess I just have to trust the translator who has already used Christian language. And by the way, does Christianity do philosophical midwifery? Heck no. They very much love punishment. They have sacraments, confession, where you have to say, I'm sorry, and then flagellate yourself. You have to say 10 Hail Marys, blah, 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 blah. Bollocks. Why? To believe that you are not good enough. Sin, you are a sinner, which is literally a kind of pathologos. To believe that you are not divine, to believe you are not noble, to believe there's something wrong with self and reality. That's baked into Christianity and almost every single religion. Why? Because religion means to be bound by belief. If you weren't wrong or stupid or bad or a sinner, then you wouldn't have to believe someone better than you. That's what belief is, to believe in authority. You would be able to understand for yourself. And they wouldn't be able to use fear and guilt to block you to accept subjugation, to accept being, in the past, poor while the clergy are rich. How much money does the Vatican have? Ooh, lots. To accept slavery and subjugation in hierarchical religious systems. Paying a penalty for ancient grief sounds very much like suffering because you're a sinner. Very different from purification through realizing you are not a sinner, you are not bad. In fact, what you are purifying yourself from is this false belief that you are no good or inadequate or less than the divine, not good enough in some way. The exact opposite from the way that we would read this translation. And having an understanding ourselves of the art, just like here, wise men and women who know the divine realities, well, the other half of that is knowing its opposite, knowing the false reality of self and reality. That's the pathologos, that's the art of midwifery that we have been paying careful attention to so we can deliver our art. So we are, in this definition, becoming wise in part because of mastering the art of the Pathologos, philosophical midwifery. And in doing so, we can take that knowledge and art in with us in our reading to recognize it's not a penalty for ancient grief, which is Christian bollocks, or, not just Christianity. Throw a stone, you'll find a cult that has to oppress people by believing they're not good enough, so they're less on the hierarchy. You're not good enough because you're a woman. You're not good enough. The reason why you're not king is you weren't divinely picked by God. That's literally the justifications for royalty. And so on and so on and so on. Not new news. So let's see what the word ancient means in the Greek. So recognizing all that, the cause of societal pathologos or milieu problems, like the idea of sin, the idea of subjugation, the idea of domination, authority, hierarchies that oppress, and they use guilt and fear to do so, which sets the stage for the pathologos. Knowing all that, we can recognize, this translation might be bollocks. Might be the exact opposite. Or at least can be very easily interpreted in that way. That's the opposite of the truth. That's harmful. So one of the significance of having our nose in the Philosophical Midwifery book, and that's why we say to be in this game, you have to be having your nose in one of these books. The Logos of Socrates, you have to have your nose in the Pathologos of Midwifery. And you have to be seeking excellence. And you might even say, one more thing is dream analysis. We haven't gotten into that in this channel yet, but it's on the horizon. Paleo. Paleo. What does paleo mean? Paleo means paleo. Overcome. Interesting. Maybe it's not the right word. Where's the word ancient? Wrestle. 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 Of old date, ancient. Old in years. Interesting. Old in years. Ancient. Ancient, old, aged. Right, so old or ancient. Hello, welcome, GoldenEye Ballast, to the chat. Thanks for saying hi. So, Persephone sends souls, which are immortal, back to the sun above. My day is going with very much, with a lot of curiosity and wonder. How's your day going? So Persephone sends souls who have purified themselves from an old, ancient problem they've been wrestling with. What's that called? Pathologos. A false belief about ourself and reality we get from this misfortunate event, unhappy event from our childhood that we learn about on this channel. Nice to hear. If you sufficiently purify from that inherited false belief about yourself that causes your problems, the pathologos, that you wrestle with your whole life, then Persephone can send you back again to the sun above. Now we are wondering, does that mean being? Or does that mean because in the Republic, Socrates talks about how we have this physical world of becoming, where we get opinions and beliefs. That's where Meno is, down here. It's our physical world. This is where we're born into. Oh, and my pen's being weird. Oh, no. Garbage. Okay, we're not going to do much drawing today. My pen's being a bit weird. Why is that? Maybe if I unplug this and plug it in again. Let's see if it does anything. Come on, pen. No. Can I draw lines? Yeah. No. Okay. I'm not going to be able to use my pen much today. It's okay, I'll use my mouse. So, the physical world that we're born into, that's the world of opinions and beliefs. That's where Meno is. Right, you're not winning that wrestling match, but I'll try. So, on this channel, we read Socrates to develop an understanding of the Logos, which is the understandable pattern of reality that we can use to climb this ladder to reach our purpose, to reach reality, which is the realm of being, and understand and know ourselves. That ladder involves understanding, which we are learning to do as we learn to read for ourselves, not belief. And our understanding opens us up to higher states of mind or experiences. And if you experience reality itself, that which is eternal and immortal, the realm of being, that experience or that cognitive function is called nous. But also, if this is the Logos is the word that means the understandable pattern of reality, we also have the Pathologos. That's our false belief about ourselves and the world that keeps us from climbing that ladder. It creates our blocks at every stage. And it's the shadow of this ladder, so it's kind of stuck on the ground. It looks like railway tracks. So on this channel, we do Philosophical Midwifery, which is how to understand the nature of the Pathologos, so you can free yourself from your unsuspected false beliefs about yourself and the world that cause your problems. And that freedom allows us to climb this ladder, which we do by reading Socrates. Not any translation of Socrates, but the Balboa translation of Socrates, because all the other translations up until this one have been garbage. They've been way off base. Hilariously mistranslated to mean the opposite of what Socrates is saying. But we have the Balboa, which is great, and we can also read the Greek. Whenever we suspect that a word might be super key, we have to look it up for ourselves. Or if we suspect our translator might have his Pathologos influencing it. Today we've seen that there is a Pathologos related to our author's Christianity that's maybe influencing his translation of the text to use Christian language. But because we're aware that this is a human thing, we don't have to be a slave to it. We can read it for ourselves. That's what we've been doing today. So on this channel, this is Philosophical Midwifery. This is True Philosophy. And by the way, the same structure applies to both. The structure of the Logos that we use to master understanding, to open us up to nous, to experience reality, and go beyond it to the sun itself. You could say reality or being is the sunlight, and the sun itself could be the self. That's our question here. That's the dialectic, that's that structure. And similarly, the way of understanding, discovering, you have to discover it because it's unsuspected. It was never put into words. The way of discovering and re-understanding our false beliefs about ourselves is the dialectic. So the same dialectic is the art that applies to both, which is very interesting because if we are here to, as we've been reading, to be let into the sun above, so long as we have purified through the dialectic and Logos our ancient wrestling match caused by an unfortunate event. in other words, purified ourselves from our pathologos, then our soul may do what Socrates calls not just escape the chains of our problems, but escape the prison of reincarnation and be allowed into. Now, this is the question. When this poet is saying the sun above, does she mean being, or even the cause of being, the self? Now, we can understand that as three fundamental levels of reality. There's the physical world, where 99% of people are in. They're arguing over their opinions and their beliefs, and they think philosophy is just using words in a clever way to win debates, to say that my opinions are right and blah, blah, blah. That's Meno. That's who Socrates is talking to in the book called the Meno. Now, we have to realize that education is not about that. It's not even about getting wealth and fame and money and Bugattis. These are all physical things you can't take with you when you die. That would be irrational to think that your life is about accumulating physical fame or possessions. So the dialectic allows us to reach this realm of being. Now, you can say the physical world is the world of becoming. Everything is becoming into being or decaying. It's always in change. Whereas the nature of this world, the metaphysical world, is called being. It's eternal. And that's needed because it has the principles of the logos and the dialectic that are needed to inform the patterns of reality, the laws of reality that we need to master here to purify ourselves from what's false and understand how to reach the ladder up to this realm. That's the logos and dialectic. That's also mind itself. And then one of the questions is, hang on a second, is virtue, the excellence of our soul, an aspect of this? Because you have aspects of virtue, like justice is a part of virtue, courage is a part of virtue, wisdom is a part of virtue. But if they're parts, does that mean that virtue is the whole of being? Well, how do you know the whole of being? How do you know the whole of the physical world? It can't be while you're in the physical world, because while you're in the physical world, you can only see the parts. But if you are like Socrates and you can reach this realm of being, you can look back on the whole of beliefs, which is what we do when we read philosophy and when we do midwifery. So we can look at beliefs as a whole and artfully use our understanding to benefit people. Benefit people in understanding the nature of their false beliefs, but also help people go from the physical world to this realm. Now, helping people purify themselves from their ancient struggles caused by a misfortunate event, that's midwifery. And what Socrates is doing is the other part of it. Once you're free, doesn't mean you're up here, it means you're not blocked. You use that freedom to go up here. That's what Socrates is using the dialectic for. So Socrates, in this particular text, he's talking about wise men and women who use their art to purify people from their beliefs, or what we would call philosophical midwifery. But in this text, he's doing the other part. Now, if that's the case, that you can only solve the problem of beliefs from a higher level of reality, Einstein's quote, "You can't solve problems with the same way of thinking that causes the problems." It's a very lovely quote that I see on social media sometimes. What that means is, you can't do what modern philosophers think philosophy is, or modern preachers think spirituality is. Debate beliefs they don't agree with other beliefs they do. Look, I can quote the Bible, so my beliefs are better. Doesn't change anyone's mind. Ever. Same thing with philosopher videos on YouTube where this guy is owned or he was destroyed in a debate. No one ever is made better. No one is benefited. There's no art there. People just become more entrenched in their ignorance and their beliefs because they've made They've been forced to defend it in a debate. No art. Socrates is saying, hey, to have an art, you have to realize that the logos is to reach here, and from this higher level of thinking, understanding and nous. Now, understanding not the physical world, not understanding how to fix a car, but understanding this, which means we need the word dianoia, which is a Greek word. We don't have an English equivalent, which is one of the reasons why we have to reawaken philosophy. It's not a part of our language, it's not a part of our culture. So it's our understanding and experience, our dianoia and nous of this realm that allows Socrates to benefit Meno, and also he calls that wisdom. Because in the text he's saying, this is new, this is where we are in the text, this is where we are for everybody else reading along. Hey, what makes these people wise is that they can help people purify themselves from their false beliefs, because they have an experience of the divine realities. We've already talked about the divine realities. Justice and holiness and courage. These are the real beings, the parts of virtue. So wise might not be virtue. Because if these people are these wise men and women who have an art because they have the logos, and therefore they can benefit, they can use their art to benefit, they might be wise because maybe they know all of the divine realities, so maybe that's virtue, or maybe they just know some. Nevertheless, they are in this level here, Socrates level. Now this quote is, hey, once you have purified yourself from what's false, caused by a misfortunate event, notice no punishment, no suffering needed, just reflection on yourself and the cause of your false beliefs, which requires the dialectic. So in other words, if you're here to purify what's false, you can only do it by mastering the other dialectic. So any punishment is not suffering, or putting you in jail, or exploiting you from profits through slave labor or prison labor, or blowing you up through a genocide. Nope, only one thing, dialectic. Because it's the dialectic that is used to surface your false belief and purify yourself from it. And your false beliefs is what causes your problems. So, dialectic. And also, once you're free, it's a dialectic to move up again. Notice we said that earlier. We said it's the same dialectic that applies to climbing this ladder and freeing yourself from this train tracks, which is the shadow of this ladder. The train tracks keep you stuck on fate, and that ladder leads you to your destiny. So our question is, hang on a second, if you've done your work, you've learned that mastered the art of dialectic by not just being initiated into the divine realities, but also have the logos, have the ladder, which allows you to function with it. Again, all of these words we wouldn't have unless we looked it up for ourselves. Otherwise, we'd be like, oh, you're a priest who just uses a logos pertaining to your ministry? That sounds like a preacher. Nope. No. You couldn't be further from the truth. This is the significance of reading for ourselves. You're wise because you know the divine realities. You are filled with it. You can use it. You have integrated it. What's that? Education and nurture. It's part of your being. And you have paid careful attention to the logos, the opposite of beliefs, the opposite of religion, which means to be bound by belief. So you can, not a ministry, but an practice, pursuit, and study of an art. Art benefits. Has to. So, all of that we take with us into this quote. Hey, and if you do that, then you have sufficiently purified yourself from an ancient, let's do this one here, from an ancient wrestle that human beings struggle with every single day, with every thought, and every thought, distraction, fantasy, problem is a message being sent to us that is understandable through midwifery to help us purify ourselves from an ancient false belief that we've developed and got through a family tradition. That's why it's ancient. So once we've done that, we can be let back into the sun above. So now our question is, does the word sun above mean what Socrates is saying okay, can't use that. The initiation into there that Meno lacked from his garbage education, the same kind of education we get nowadays, by the way. Maybe it's time to listen to Socrates. This initiation, is this the sun above? Or is it more like the way the sun is used as an analogy in the Republic? Because Socrates in the Republic says, hey, let me give you an analogy. This physical world, or physical senses, governed by projections of your own beliefs and pathologos, that's like being chained to the back wall of a cave. And all of these physical appearances are just shadows. They're just shadows. Everyone thinks that's the real world. It isn't. And you're chained to only see the shadows, so you think that's real. So go down to the pub, say, hey, what do you think's real? You're meeting people in the cave. Well, I think this physical world is real because it affects me and it's all I know. Socrates says your job is to free yourself from the chains that prevent you from even looking around and realizing the cause of the shadows, and take this journey out to the real world. So the famous cave allegory of Plato should be called the allegory of the cave and the outside world. Now, when he talks about the outside world, he describes different things. Trees and animals and people. But he says, and you know what? There's one thing I'm not going to talk about because it's a problem for you to solve. I wouldn't be a good teacher if I gave you all the answers, like we do at school nowadays. You have to solve what is the sun above that creates, just like our physical sun is the cause of all life in our physical world, so too is this sun the cause of all of the beings in the realm of being that we use the outside world as a metaphor to describe. So that's the question we have now in the text. Is this quote here, in the 9th year, Persephone sends souls of those who she has received the purification, the dialectic, midwifery, logos, from ancient struggles caused by a misfortunate event, Pathologos, origin scene, sends them back to the sun above. Does she mean the realm of being? Or does she mean the one self? Notice the difference from Christian language that says, hey, the realm of being or God, yourself is below, you are a sinner, you are less than. So you can't read the book. You can't understand the mind of God. It's mysterious to you, you idiot. Garbage. The truth is, according to these wise men and Socrates and the Logos, objectively true is that, hey, even the gods or the beings have their own existence, have their own selfhood, self-beauty, self-justice, which means there has to be a cause even of that. If all these beings exist as a oneness or unity, you need the idea of one for there to be onenesses. Or if they all have their own selfhood, their own kind of immortal existence, then you need the self. So that's the one self above here. So that's a question that we can wonder about. Oh, in the chat, I always knew I was the problem for myself the whole time, but for real perceptions can change the filter of life. Yeah, in a sense. Not you, the you that you think you are, the you that you're identified with, the pathologos. So the purification from our false belief about ourselves gives us a freedom to discover the highest reflection of ourselves in the realm of being. But hey, what do the gods even seek? That's the virtue of holiness, deity that we're reading here. Even these gods seek something. What's the good that they seek? The self. Beyond even the highest experience of eternity. And if this is enlightenment, experiencing eternity, what would you call this up here? And by the way, if that's the self, it might be worth dropping the false belief about ourselves, because you can't simultaneously carry a false belief about yourself if it's inconsistent with the truth about yourself. So if you believe you're a sinner, or you believe you're no good, or you believe that your goals are not important, you can't carry those beliefs and reach your highest destiny. You have to sacrifice one. And our quote saying, hey, Persephone says, hey, once you've purified those false beliefs, she'll let you up here. Or here, don't know what she means by the sun. But we have a question, and part of reading is looking for questions, putting them in our inventory, in our lovely question sack, and going back into the dungeon, back into the adventure, back into the fray. What does she mean by the sun above? Let's keep reading. From these arise those that would be noble kings and great men who are strong and agile, and those who are surpassing in wisdom. Whoa. Wisdom is one of those virtues. What are the virtues? Temperance, courage, wisdom, justice, and the mysterious fifth one, phronesis, as well as that half virtue, holiness, being like the gods. Those are the virtues that Socrates talks about. And by the way, if you want to understand modern philosophy, all they've done is taken those words and ripped out everything above this line. We call that Stoicism, Stoics. It's the most trending opinion about philosophy nowadays at the time of recording, at least on YouTube and things. Stoicism is just the language of those virtues without what they actually are, beings. And their job to go beyond. So they talk about courage as being physically strong and being a physically tough Sigma Alpha, grind set, tough guy, angry all the time, whatever. Courage just for courage's sake. And wisdom is just collecting a whole bunch of opinions from listening to a million different podcasts. Or having your own podcast and acting like your opinions are the right ones because you're a Sigma. That's called Stoicism. So those who are surpassing in wisdom, who are then called holy heroes. Interesting. What is a true hero? Now that's one of our hypotheses and puzzles. If we are realizing that, hang on a second, in going through philosophy, in climbing this ladder, we are going through the various different stages that is represented in the hero's journey that is expressed in media, in video games and in movies and in TV shows. Then we ask the question, what is the paradigm that all of these other things are copying? What's the true hero's journey? Is Socrates giving us a clue? The true heroes, the holy heroes, the archetype of heroes. So those who have purified themselves from their problems that are ancient, caused by an unfortunate event, Pathologos, can be received back to the sun above, being or the self, don't know. And they would be noble kings, ooh, and great men, ooh.
Wow.
Who are strong and agile, and those who are surpassing in wisdom, who are called holy heroes among human beings in the ages to come. So maybe our age, 2,500 years later, that's an age to come. Maybe we can have a class of human beings who pick up the Balboa translation, pick up the Philosophical Midwifery book, and actually follow the true path, the holy hero, or the archetype, the immortal, eternal archetype or paradigm of the hero. Maybe we will call them true heroes and call them the ones who have actual wisdom. And those doofuses using words to argue without any benefit, without any understanding, just to say that, pretend that they are wise because their opinions are well liked, and therefore they can make money. We call them today grifters, the right-wing griftosphere, or the manosphere, griftosphere. A sphere like just capitalism. How do you exploit wealth from people? Maybe we should change capitalism, if that's its nature. Nevertheless, we can surpass those and become actual great men, and we will recognize them as the true heroes or the holy heroes. So let's look up this word here to see what it means for ourselves. Could be holy. We've seen holy before. But let's nail it down. No, not that one, this one. Agony. Agnoi. What's agnoi mean? Because paleo, I think, was... Oh yeah, that was an ancient wrestle. But... agnoi means... holy. Things dedicated to the gods. Now, do we see any PLs for Plato? Here's Plato here. Any more PLs for Plato? Okay, let's try a different one. Dedicated to the gods, holy. Yeah, it looks like it's holy. Yep. Divine or semi-divine. Following, belonging to, administered by the divinities. So that's that mysterious general virtue, being like the gods. So, what does that mean? Well, as we talk about the hero's journey, and since this book was written, we have books that if you are a screenwriter, you probably study as part of your education. Hero of 1,000 Faces, or The Hero's Journey, which shows, there seems to be a pattern or archetype in mythology that, we can use to make Star Wars or Harry Potter or video games. If that's the case, if there is a standard archetype, what is the archetype itself? You could say, what is the divine version? Which is one of the things we've been looking for this whole podcast so far. We've been using these analogies because anime and video games and movies and TV are fun and awesome and readily accessible. So we're using that as a metaphor to better understand our true quest, our true journey, which is philosophy, Because if our job is to completely relearn philosophy because our opinions given to us by our society is garbage, the opposite of philosophy, what Meno thinks is philosophy, then we have to learn a new thing. So you start with a metaphor. That's why our channel has been using these as metaphors. But finally, we have it in the text, the archetypal hero, or the divine version of the hero. Someone who is a truly great man and should become a noble king. Philosopher king, we would say. So finally we have that word, which is very exciting. So we get some confetti. Hooray.
Wow.
Lots of confetti. And some balloons. Hooray. Because we finally found the archetype of the hero, the holy hero in the text. Which is neat. And you know what? In the ages to come, let's say our age, because we need them, because one thing they didn't have back in their time, if people were like Meno playing out their Pathologos because very few people listened to Socrates and followed him, yeah, we would have the never-ending cycles of bloodshed and war and genocide and exploitation and stamping on the throats of humanity right up until now. But one thing they didn't have is nuclear weapons. In other words, if there is ever to be a true archetype of heroes within the human race, within the race of men, if there ever were to be great men who need to become the noble kings of our society, it's now. Why? Simply because we have the technology to play out our pathologos with species-ending conclusions. This fate, these train tracks we're on, ends soon. Our fate. And if anybody has been watching the American elections, at the time of recording, November 2024, you know what we're talking about. And anyone who's got an eye on what the Western societies are doing in Palestine with the genocide, and how a lot of people say, hey, don't do genocides, and what Trump is doing in support of that and support of Russia and everything else that's happening, you can see, well, pretty much we are on this path. And if there is ever going to be an age where we recognize people on the true hero's journey, the divine or archetype hero's journey, and recognize them as the true great men and insist they become our great kings, it has to be now. So if you are lucky enough to be born right here at this part of history, you are lucky enough to be able to access the Balboa translation, which is a translation of the actual ancient Greek and a brilliant, okay, there are some moments where we have to read the ancient Greek for ourselves, but we can do that. But other than these moments, pretty much the text has been a million times better than anything we've been able to read. So we can do this hero's journey, and we have the Orange Book, we have the Philosophical Midwifery to do this purification from an ancient grief, an ancient misfortune that causes our problems, causes our wrestling matches in our life. In other words, the only time we could reawaken philosophy is now, and the only time we can do it is now because of the implications of technology and how it relates to the ending of our species if we don't wake up to the logos and the dialectic, to the art. So, if you are born here and you're watching this, congratulations for you. Thumbs up. Because you are at a very curious part of history, and if you come across this video, you have an opportunity to do this. And maybe you will be called a truly divine hero in our age. Now is the time. Very curious time to be alive, wouldn't you say? By the way, what a puzzle. What a confusing, puzzling moment to be alive where all of these things are falling into place. Does that make you stung? Does that make you puzzled? Does that put you in a state of self-puzzlement or aporia, self-aporia? it better, because what a fantastically puzzling, confusing, stinging, benumbing situation to be in and time to be alive. Socrates is really laying it out. Provided we do all this work we've done today to unpack it and understand it, follow the Logos. And hey, if we're doing it, we may be on the true hero's journey's quest. And maybe we will be recognized as the noble kings, great men, surpassing others in wisdom, and be called holy heroes. Which is just a name. The point is, you're doing what you're here for, which will allow your soul to be led into your destiny, the sun above, either the realm of being or the self above that. So whether or not you are acknowledged in this life, well, the most important thing is this part. But hey, if you are the sort of person who does do this, stays with it, masters the Logos of Socrates and the Pathologos of the Orange Book that we read on this channel, then I would insist that you become the noble kings of our time. Not because you'd want it, you'd be more interested in this. What Socrates calls dwelling in the Isles of the Blessed, being hanging out in the higher realms of reality. But if you see there's a purpose to humanity, maybe we'll call you a great hero, a holy hero or a divine hero, and insist that you become some sort of a king. To use your art like these holy people, use your careful attention of the Logos to deliver it artfully to benefit all of us. And if you have that possibility and you're watching this channel, please, I'm cheering for you. And lots of confetti for you. So with that to wonder about, we're going to see next time, what does Socrates say about this quote? Because hey, Meno has already given a quote. That's garbage. Virtue is, what does he say? Let's see it in the text. Instead of using the dialectic, to rejoice in the beautiful and to rejoice in beauty and be able. What's virtue? To desire beautiful things and be able to get them. Socrates is saying, hey, don't just quote garbage. But Socrates is quoting something else. Why is Socrates throwing in a quote? Maybe it's helping Meno. Maybe he's not picking up the understanding. It's too far over his head. Especially if he has no understanding of the realm of being, or how to think, or how to use a dialectic to think and understand. So maybe throwing in a different quote might appeal to him. He did seem interested. Hey, I've met actually wise people. Oh, what did they say? Maybe this is part of it. Maybe this is the beauty part of the truth. Make it enticing. So we have a lot of questions. Why is Socrates quoting someone? How does it help us? How does it help Meno? And what the heck has that got to do with virtue? And what has all of this got to do with our true purpose to reach the sun above, purify ourselves from our problems, and become divine heroes? Lots of questions, lots of stuff to be puzzled about and stung about. Hopefully so stung you're self-stung. And I hope that wonder and curiosity brings you back next time, where we will continue to read. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.